Ernie Shore sat in the stands wearing street clothes, watching his former teammate. Babe Ruth was on the field, playing for the Yankees now. Ernie had moved on too. Different team, different city, but he still came to watch when he could, still appreciated greatness when he saw it. This was supposed to be a normal game, a pleasant afternoon, just baseball. Until a fan yelled something, a small insult. Nothing unusual, stadiums were full of hecklers. But what Ernie saw next froze him in place. Babe Ruth was climbing over the railing, jumping into the stands, chasing a man through the crowd, and Ernie realized with sudden horror that this was about to become very dangerous. He stood up, started moving, because he knew Babe, knew his temper, knew his recklessness, and he saw something else, something that made his blood run cold. The fan Babe was chasing had reached into his pocket, and when his hand came back out, metal glinted in the afternoon sun. A knife, and Babe didn't see it coming. The Polo Grounds, New York City, early 1920s. The exact date is lost to history, but the incident is documented. Multiple newspapers reported it. Witnesses remembered it for decades. Ernie Shore himself confirmed it happened. This was not myth, not exaggeration. This was real. A moment when one of baseball's greatest players came within inches of being stabbed by an angry fan. All because of an insult. All because Babe Ruth could not control his temper. All because violence was always just beneath the surface of his larger-than-life persona. Babe Ruth's relationship with crowds was complicated. On most days, he loved them, fed off their energy. He was a showman. He signed autographs willingly, posed for photographs, talked to kids, gave baseballs to children in the stands. He genuinely enjoyed the attention, thrived on being recognized everywhere he went. The cheers, the adulation. This was oxygen to Babe Ruth. But there was another side, a darker side, a temper that could ignite instantly, a pride that could not tolerate disrespect, a physical nature that responded to insults with violence. He had grown up fighting on Baltimore streets, had learned early that respect came through strength, through willingness to throw punches, and that street mentality never left him, no matter how famous he became. Deep inside, he was still that angry kid from Pigtown who would fight anyone who challenged him. Heckling was part of baseball, always had been. Fans yelled insults at players constantly, as called them names, questioned their manhood, made crude jokes. Most players learned to ignore it, developed thick skin, let the words wash over them without reaction. This was the professional approach. But Babe Ruth was neither professional nor mature when it came to hecklers. He took insults personally, let them get under his skin, and occasionally, spectacularly, he responded. The incident that day started like countless others. A fan in the stands yelling at Babe. Maybe Babe had struck out. Maybe he had made an error in the outfield. Maybe the fan was drunk. Maybe he just wanted attention. The specific circumstances are unclear. What is clear is that at some point during the game, this particular fan directed an insult at Babe Ruth, called him a piece of cheese. Not the most creative insult. Not the most offensive thing ever yelled at a baseball player. Just a silly, mocking phrase meant to demean, to suggest Babe was soft, weak, nothing special. Most days Babe might have ignored it, might have laughed it off, might have responded with a gesture or a comment of his own before returning his focus to the game. But not this day. On this day, something in those words hit differently, triggered something, made Babe's anger spike past the point of control. He heard "piece of cheese," and something inside him snapped. Babe stopped what he was doing, turned toward the stands, scanned the crowd until he located the heckler, made eye contact. The fan, feeling brave from the safety of the stands, probably smiled, probably thought this was entertainment, probably expected Babe to yell something back or give him the finger. What the fan did not expect was what happened next. Babe Ruth started walking toward the stands, not yelling, not gesturing, just moving with purpose, with intent. The kind of movement that signals something serious is about to happen. The crowd noticed, people stopped watching the game, started watching Babe. Conversations died, heads turned, everyone could feel the energy shift. Something was wrong, this was not normal. Babe reached the railing that separated the field from the stands. For a second, he paused. This was the moment he could have stopped, could have reconsidered, could have let it go. But Babe Ruth never let things go, never backed down, never chose the reasonable path when the violent path was available. He grabbed the railing, pulled himself up, and jumped into the stands. The crowd erupted, not with cheers, with shock, and with disbelief. Players did not jump into the stands. This did not happen. This was crossing a fundamental line. The barrier between field and stands was sacred. It kept order, kept separation, kept violence from erupting. And Babe Ruth had just shattered it. The fan who had called him a piece of cheese was sitting maybe 10 rows up. When he saw Babe climbing into the stands, his bravado evaporated. His smile disappeared. Fear replaced it. He realized with sudden clarity that he had made a terrible mistake, that Babe Ruth was not joking, was not posturing, was coming to hurt him, really hurt him. The fan stood up, started moving, climbing over seats, pushing past other spectators, trying to create distance, trying to escape. But Babe was faster, stronger, more determined. He moved through the stands like a predator chasing prey. He had knocked aside anyone in his path, focused entirely on reaching the heckler. People scrambled to get out of the way. This was not entertainment anymore. This was danger, real physical danger. A 200-plus-pound professional athlete in a rage, chasing a civilian through a crowded stadium. Anything could happen. Anyone could get hurt. The fan kept climbing, moving higher into the stands, heading for the upper levels. Maybe hoping to lose Babe in the crowd, maybe hoping to reach an exit, maybe just running on pure panic with no plan at all. But Babe stayed with him, matched every move, closed the distance, relentless, unstoppable. The gap between them shrank. 20 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet. The fan could probably hear Babe's breathing behind him, could feel the presence, could sense how close this was getting. And then the fan reached the top aisle, the highest point in that section. No more rows to climb, no more seats to jump over, just a wall behind him and Babe Ruth in front of him, trapped, cornered, out of options. The fan turned around. Babe was maybe 6 feet away now, close enough to grab, close enough to punch, close enough to destroy. The crowd around them had gone silent, everyone watching, everyone waiting to see what would happen when these two men collided. This is the moment Ernie Shore saw the knife. He had been moving through the stands himself, following the chase, trying to reach them before something terrible happened. And from his angle, slightly to the side, he saw what Babe could not see from directly in front. The fan's hand going to his pocket. The motion, quick, furtive, desperate. And then the blade. Not huge. Not a sword, but a knife. Metal catching the light. Sharp enough to cut. Sharp enough to kill if thrust in the right place. Ernie's heart stopped. Time seemed to slow. Babe was still advancing, still focused on the fan's face, still planning to grab him and teach him a lesson with his fists. He had no idea the situation had just escalated from a fistfight to a potential stabbing. The fan was holding the knife low, not brandishing it openly, not waving it around, just holding it, waiting, preparing to defend himself the only way he could against a man twice his size. Ernie did not think, did not calculate, did not weigh options. He just reacted, moved faster than he had ever moved on a baseball field, pushed through the crowd, reached the space between Babe and the fan, put his body between them, put his hands up, one hand toward Babe, and one hand toward the fan. Physical barrier, human shield. Stop! Ernie's voice cut through the tension. Stop right now. Babe recognized him. The anger in his eyes flickered, confusion replacing it for a moment. Ernie, what are you doing? Babe's voice was still hot, still ready to fight. But seeing his old teammate, someone he trusted, someone he respected, created a pause, a break in the momentum that had been carrying him forward. Look at his hand, Ernie said, kept his voice steady, kept his hands up, did not move. Look at what he's holding. Babe's eyes shifted down, saw the knife. The realization hit him like cold water. The fan was not just scared. The fan was armed. And if Ernie had not intervened, if Babe had reached him and grabbed him, the fan might have used that knife, might have stabbed Babe in the gut, in the side, in the chest, might have seriously injured or even killed him. The crowd around them was frozen. Everyone could see the knife now. Everyone understood how close this had come to disaster. Someone screamed. Someone else called for security. But for a few more seconds, it was just the three of them. Ernie between two men who had been seconds from violence, holding the moment in suspension, preventing catastrophe through nothing but physical presence and calm authority. Ernie turned slightly toward the fan, kept one hand on Babe to make sure he stayed back. "Put that away," Ernie said to the fan. "Put it away right now." The fan's hand was shaking. His face was white. He looked like he might pass out. But he listened. Lowered the knife, put it back in his pocket. Hands up now to show he was no longer armed, no longer a threat. "It ain't get out of here," Ernie told the fan. "Go, now, before I change my mind about stopping him." The fan did not argue, did not apologize, just moved, fast. Climbed over seats in the other direction, disappeared into the crowd, gone, leaving Ernie alone with Babe and 100 shocked spectators. Babe was breathing hard, adrenaline still pumping, anger still visible in his face. But the immediate crisis had passed. The target was gone. The fight was over before it started. Ernie kept his hand on Babe's shoulder. "Come on," Ernie said quietly. "Let's get you back on the field." Babe looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. The rage was draining away, being replaced by something else. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe realization of how stupid this had been. Maybe gratitude that Ernie had stopped him before something terrible happened. They walked back down through the stands together. The crowd parted for them, silent, respectful, awed. They had just witnessed something that would become legend. Babe Ruth jumping into the stands to fight a fan, a knife being pulled, Ernie Shore stepping between them. No bloodshed, no one injured, but so close, so terribly close. When they reached the field level, Babe turned to Ernie. "He had a knife," Babe said, like he was still processing it, still understanding how dangerous that moment had been. "Yeah," Ernie said simply. "He did. If you hadn't," Babe started, then stopped. Could not finish the sentence, could not articulate what might have happened. "But I did," Ernie said. "That's all that matters." They stood there for a moment, two men who had been teammates, who had thrown combined no-hitters together, and who had shared victories and defeats, now connected by something else, by a moment when one had saved the other from potentially deadly violence. Babe clapped Ernie on the shoulder, hard, grateful, then climbed back over the railing onto the field, returned to the dugout. The game continued, like nothing had happened, like a player had not just tried to attack a fan, like a knife had not just been pulled in the stands. Baseball in the 1920s was different. Things that would end careers today were handled quietly, swept under the rug, forgotten. The newspapers reported it. The Brooklyn Eagle ran a story, mentioned the knife, mentioned Ernie Shore's intervention, mentioned that no blood was shed. Other papers picked it up, then moved on. New stories, new headlines. Babe did something else outrageous, and this faded into background. But the people who were there never forgot. The witnesses told the story for years. The details changed with each telling. The knife got longer. The confrontation got more violent. This is how legends are built, kernels of truth wrapped in layers of embellishment. But the core remained accurate. Babe Ruth jumped into the stands. A fan pulled a knife. Ernie Shore intervened. Years later, when Babe wrote his autobiography, he mentioned a similar incident. But in his version, it was Yankees co-owner Till Houston who jumped between him and the fan, not Ernie Shore. Maybe Babe's memory was faulty. Maybe there were multiple incidents. Or maybe Babe just could not acknowledge how much he had needed saving. Ernie never corrected the record publicly, never sought credit. This fit his personality. Ernie Shore was not a glory seeker. He had been a great pitcher in his own right, had thrown what many considered a perfect game, had won 65 games in his career, but he was overshadowed by Babe's fame, and he seemed fine with that. But to those who knew the true story, Ernie Shore was more than that. He was the man who saved Babe Ruth's life, or at least saved him from serious injury, saved him from the consequences of his own temper and recklessness. That moment in the stands when Ernie put his body between Babe and the knife, that was heroism, quiet, unassuming, the kind that does not seek recognition but deserves it anyway. The incident revealed something essential about Babe Ruth, something uncomfortable, something that did not fit the legend of the jovial, fun-loving Bambino. Underneath the smile and the home runs and the charm was violence, real violence. Why the capacity and willingness to physically hurt people who insulted him. This was not playful, not theatrical. When Babe jumped into those stands, he intended to beat that fan, to hurt him, to make him regret his words through pain. And if the fan had not pulled a knife, if Ernie had not intervened, Babe probably would have done exactly that. This pattern repeated throughout Babe's career. Punching umpires, climbing into stands to fight hecklers, challenging entire stadiums to come fight him, throwing dirt in officials' faces. These were not isolated incidents, not aberrations. This was who Babe Ruth was when his temper was triggered, a man who responded to words with violence, who could not let insults pass, who had to dominate, had to win. The fact that fans loved him anyway tells us something about 1920s America. About what people admired, about what they forgave in their heroes. Babe could be violent, could be reckless, could cross lines that should never be crossed. But as long as he kept hitting home runs, as long as he kept filling stadiums, it did not matter. His transgressions were minimized, explained away, forgotten, but they mattered to the people involved, to the umpires he struck, to the fans he chased. And they could have mattered much more if that fan's knife had been bigger. If Ernie Shore had been sitting somewhere else, if the angle had been wrong, then this story would have ended very differently. Then instead of a colorful anecdote, it would have been tragedy. The day baseball's greatest star was stabbed by an angry fan. The knife itself remains a mystery. How long was it? Different accounts gave different descriptions. Some said it was a small pocket knife. Others claimed it was longer, more threatening. The Brooklyn Eagles report simply confirmed it existed, that it was pulled, that violence was prevented. The exact size and type of blade were lost to history. What is not in dispute is that Ernie Shore saved the day. His quick thinking, his physical intervention, his calm authority in a moment of chaos. Without him, something terrible probably would have happened. Either Babe would have beaten the fan severely, or the fan would have stabbed Babe in self-defense. Or both. Violence would have erupted, and people would have been hurt. But Ernie prevented it, stepped into the gap, absorbed the tension, diffused the bomb. This makes Ernie Shore one of the unsung heroes of baseball history, not for his pitching, not for his statistics, but for this moment. This act of courage and quick decision-making that saved one of the game's greatest players from his own worst impulses. That is worth remembering, worth honoring, worth telling. The fan who pulled the knife also disappeared into history. We do not know his name, do not know what happened to him after he fled. Did he get arrested, banned from the stadium, or did he just go home, shaking with fear, grateful to have escaped? We will never know. He became anonymous again, except for those few moments when he was at the center of an incident that could have changed baseball history. This is why the story matters, not just as an entertaining anecdote about Babe being Babe, but as a reminder of how fragile everything was, how close to chaos. Babe Ruth's greatness was real, his talent was undeniable, his impact on baseball was permanent. But he was also reckless, violent, dangerous to himself and others. And on one afternoon in the early 1920s, that recklessness nearly cost him everything. Ernie Shore died in 1980. Babe Ruth died in 1948. The fan is long dead too. The Polo Grounds was demolished in 1964. All that remains are newspaper accounts and memories. The story of the day Babe Ruth jumped into the stands and almost got stabbed. The day Ernie Shore became a hero. And somewhere in those moments between Babe's jump and Ernie's intervention and the knife going back in the pocket, there is a truth about sports and fame and violence. About how thin the line is between legend and disaster. About how the same qualities that make someone great can also destroy them. About how heroes sometimes need saving too. And about how the real heroes are often the quiet ones. The ones who step forward when needed. The ones who prevent tragedy rather than cause it. The ones like Ernie Shore, who saw danger and did not hesitate, did not calculate, just acted, just saved a life, just prevented a nightmare, then went back to his seat and let history move forward without him in the spotlight.